Yeah.
So this is interesting.
Ready?
This is the one where they came up.
We're waiting on Charlie again. Yeah, now did they pull it? They pulled it, right?
Oh, wait, Charlie anytime.
It must be a little deeper,
Good evening.
more involved.
Good evening, sir.
Either that or something where people actually own the house.
So you're either coming from or going to another meeting, I can
Coming
tell by
from
the tie.
Concord. You're absolutely right, Mr. Chair. You're absolutely,
I was waiting for you to say, but I gotta leave at 7:15.
no,
I think that would poke my toe.
we tackled buildings, or bills that were retained today
Oh, that's right,
for the Transportation Committee.
yeah.
Just,
My God, huh? Transportation,
yeah, a lot of fun.
like a work session or a?
Yeah, it was a work session. We're gonna vote on them in two weeks. One of them is trying to change this DWI law, where, you know, you leave the bar, right now, if you leave the bar and you walk into your car, maybe you're just going to get your jacket or something, but you got the keys to your car.
Yep.
An officer come up to you and say, excuse me, are those the keys to your car? Yes, they are. Could you come with me, please? You've obviously had too much to drink. You're charged with DWI on the spot. But I'm just going to get my coat. No,
Almost festive.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more like,
No, that's the law now.
I don't know.
That's the law now. A lot of people don't. And if you go, let's
Sounds like
just,
attempted DWI to me.
yeah, well, one would think. And the other thing is that if again, you know, I'm not gonna chance it. I'm gonna just stay here and sleep in the car for a while. Bingo,
Just
you're
sleep in the
bagged.
car for a while.
Yeah, you're bagged. That's DWI. So we're trying to get it changed so that,
So that what we need to do is hand the cop the keys and say, here, will you keep these? I'm gonna take a nap in the
yeah,
car.
well, so what we're trying to do is get it so if they're in the passenger seat or in the back seat, they can start the car for heat, but they're not in the driver's seat. That's fine.
It's supposed to be operation.
I
don't
know,
think
we
it's-
had this
Then
big
you'll
discussion
catch people
today.
driving down the road like this.
Well, if that happens, then
So, you know what's
I wanna
really-
see how they're working those pedals.
I saw a guy at convenience store the other
Give the
day. He had
keys
a
on you
bicycle with a
when
motor on it.
and you even look at
And
your
all
car.
he said to him was, I hope you're not under suspension. That's a motor vehicle. Even though you ride him on the sidewalk and everything.
What if it's a self-driving car and it's driving you
We haven't
home?
got
Oh
that,
my
we haven't
God.
got, that's a valid point.
need a
I didn't-
special
I didn't bring
exception.
that up today, because it was already long.
What, the self-driving
Painful
car?
enough.
Because you wanted to
No,
get
what,
you
how
there.
that would work,
It runs someone
but
over while you're
that did cross my mind.
I know a guy that actually
Ossifer, my car has been
didn't hear
drinking.
in jail because he drove after being deemed habitual and the
cannot
vehicle was
lie.
a lawn tractor, which he took regularly from his home in Eaton to the
There goes the battle.
liquor store in Conway
I think we have.
to get provisions.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
I
well,
kinda see it.
yeah, they kind of waited for him one day.
I actually have
All right, well, it's 6:33 PM, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Laconia Planning Board for Tuesday, October 1st. And we'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the call of the roll, please.
Brett Bellevue,
Here,
Jay Forrester,
Here.
Charlie Sinclair,
Here,
Sarah Jenna. Here. Mike Delavecchio.
Here.
Edwin Bonas.
Here.
and Peter Burnett.
Thank you. And the staff here is Dean Trefethan, the Director, and Rob Mora, Senior Planner. All right. We'd like to accept the minutes from the previous meetings. Does anyone have anything that they want to add before we do that? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The minutes are accepted from September 3. We're starting things off right away with a proposal to create a historic overlay district and a possible scheduling of a public hearing. And with no further ado, the Director of Planning and Economic Development, Dean Trefethan.
That's only half my titles, but that's okay.
I was gonna say.
What is
yeah.
it? Planning and zoning and, what is your full title? For the record, please.
I'm sorry?
What is your full title for the record, please?
Planning, community development, zoning, and code enforcement.
Oh, my jeez, I am so sorry. It's
Chief
all
cook
yours.
and bottle washer.
Can we just call you Dean?
Yep.
Okay, Dean, it's all yours.
All right, historic overlay district. The, as you know, the HOD started with the city council, referred to the planning board. You guys created a subcommittee. Subcommittee reviewed the document, did a number of edits, and now it's back to you. It is 14 pages. I'm not going to read it, and I'm not going to summarize what's in there. The concepts that have been there since since it has been before the board, the full board originally, is the same. It's the details of some of those items that have changed. So your homework for the next month is to read this document so that you are well-versed in it. And after you do that, there are some key questions that you
There will
have
be
to
a
ask
quiz?
yourself and kind of prepare yourself to act on. And that is the document too restrictive, not restrictive enough, or just right? It's kind of like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears type situation here. Whether the process that's outlined and the authority that is outlined, is it clear and, in your mind, the correct ones? And then I think the other key question that I know that has been asked at this level before and and at other places is the boundaries of the district. Is it just right? Is it too small? Is it too big? And if it's too small, what else should be included? If it's too big, what do we take out? As you know, the boundary was delineated in response to the proposal to demo the St. Joseph's Church. And while that demo permit is still pending, it has been tabled by the Heritage Commission at the request of the diocese indefinitely. But it is still a potentially active permit. And so the district was drawn to include the church and a few other significant adjacent properties, i.e. the library and the train station. At the time that that district was drawn, there was talk about, well, do we include the former tavern building? Do we include the post office? Do we include the Colonial Theater? Do we include the former and current church that's also fronting on Veterans Square, et cetera, et cetera? And the decision at the time was to do a fairly laser-focused, for fairly obvious reasons, district. But now that there's a little bit of breathing room here, I think it's a question that we all have to look at and answer and think about what makes the most sense. And it could be that this district makes sense for now, and then in the future we create additional districts that are encompassing some of these other areas of the city. Next steps. This is an important one. If you choose, at the end of this presentation and your questions that you may have, if you choose to schedule a public hearing, that in effect starts the authority of the Historic Overlay District, i.e. any demo permit that comes in for any of the other buildings that are in the delineated district would be subject to an Historic Overlay District process and oversight and approval. If you do not schedule the public hearing this evening, for the next meeting, obviously, then that authority would not start. It only starts when you actually vote to schedule the public hearing. Yes, sir.
I have a question. What if we, to get the ball rolling, schedule a public hearing and then postpone that public hearing to a later date? Does that move everything like that, or does it not matter? In fact, the ball has started rolling, whether the public hearing is delayed or not.
I don't know the answer to that question. I think the best thing to do would be, if you choose to schedule a public hearing tonight, would be to hold that public hearing. And then after that public hearing, you don't have to make a decision at the end of that public hearing. You could delay a decision.
Or we could in fact even schedule another public
You
hearing.
could, absolutely, yes, yes.
That works.
So I just want everyone to be clear about the significance, one way or the other, of scheduling a public hearing. I would like you to come back with the next meeting with some of your concerns or questions that you have after you've done your homework. And at some point in time, whether it's the next meeting or somewhere down the road, you need to decide whether you're going to recommend it to the council or you're going to do even more edits, in which case, I guess it goes back to the subcommittee. And then depending upon the edits, if we're doing edits to the extent that we're probably going back to the subcommittee, you would definitely have to schedule another public hearing, because if you do any significant edits, then you've got to do another public hearing. If you're just changing a couple of, ands to ors, or, those kinds of things, you don't have to do another public hearing. But anything that's of substantive, you would have to do another public hearing. So with that, I will open it up to any questions in general about the historic overlay district that someone may have. Mr. Bones.
So what if we decide to just dismiss this thing completely? What's the process?
I would have to review the statute, but I believe that this could be revived before the city council on a citizen's petition.
My other question is, and concern, is that this new district only puts controls on one property. The church, they can tear that thing down tomorrow. They're already set for that.
Within a limited process.
The library is owned by the city, and the city's not required to abide by any of the rules here. And
At
so
this point in time, that's a correct statement.
So we're now looking to put together an ordinance and district that's gonna restrict the owners of the railroad station. That's
And,
it.
and the other two buildings of the church property.
And other than the house, the school probably should be torn down anyway. But, so we're gonna restrict two properties for the property owners. Has anybody taken the time to meet with those people to discuss their feelings on it?
We've talked to the library.
Okay. Well, the
We-
library does, again, they don't have any
We've had
say.
several discussions with the diocese,
Yeah.
as you can well imagine.
Yeah,
We have not talked with any owners within the train station,
and that's
nor
just
have they approached
a
us.
concern of mine, that you got a property owner with, and admittedly, that is the focal point there. And so we're planning to get together and restrict what they can do with their property. And that's a concern of mine.
Yeah, so as part of your question and concern, if you do the step of scheduling a public hearing tonight, there is a provision in the proposed ordinance that makes the city bound by this ordinance on properties that we own. There is a process to circumvent that. If the city so choose, it would be a majority vote of the city council to override the decision of the Heritage, the Historic Overlay District Commission.
That's on properties being added, or that's on properties that would be already covered?
Properties that are owned by the city, which was Ed's question. So for instance, the library.
Right.
Within the proposed district, that's the only building that's owned by the city.
But the city could, 50 years from now, they could say, you know what, we're gonna
Correct.
circumvent this.
10 years.
Or 5 months from now.
Anytime they
Right.
want.
Right.
Well, my guess is that wouldn't happen in 5
Well,
or 10
that's
months.
we
50
keep
years from now,
guessing.
though, well, I'll put money on the table on that. But I would say 50 years from now, all bets are off, so that, but that's for those people to worry about.
Well, I mean, and it's more than just, does the city decide to, for sake of discussion, God forbid, tear down the library? I think it's more of what else you could do to the library. Another addition, some
that's-
type of a remodel or facelift that completely changes the outside architecture or those kinds of things. It's more than just demo. I mean,
Right,
it's.
and those are issues that I think we all need to look at.
But does the
and work
railroad, the owners of the railroad won't have that same option. And that's a concern of mine, that the library, city can do whatever they want, as usual. But the private property owner, that's the one person we're gonna restrict here.
So I have a
Well,
question.
Yeah, that's,
True, but at some point in time, the anticipation is that there are two other properties that are probably going to be in private hand, or maybe in private hands.
Maybe. So maybe the city ought to look into buying the railroad so that if they want to tear that down later, they can do that too. See, that's the concern.
let's
You're
buy
not
everything.
required to follow the rules.
So on the question of whether we should schedule a public hearing, let me just ask you this. Of any of the buildings that are in the current or even proposed district, are they under any development pressure right now?
Not to my knowledge.
Because the one that started all this, there's a demo permit, but like you said, it's on hold. Okay, so then wouldn't it make sense for us to not schedule a public hearing until we as a board have all discussed all this and come back, done our homework and come back to the planning department and said, this is what we think should happen?
That certainly is an option, and
Because
my only comment, Mr. Chairman, is while I am not aware of any proposals or any pressure for any of the other properties, that doesn't mean that it doesn't materialize tomorrow. They don't,
Well-
and they don't know that.
if what the vice chair is saying is true, then there's really only one property and it doesn't look like it's at any danger of demolition in the next 30 days.
Counselor?
Counselor?
I just want to make a comment about your observation about what the district encompasses, because when this proposal was originally made, it included the post office and cut across Main Street to include both churches on that side of the street.
Right.
It was narrowed back to this after some discussion, so people will have some history about what that's about. My thought is that we schedule this for a public hearing tonight. That's my thought. I think the Vice Chairman, Mr. Bonas, is right. There's concerns about who we're targeting and why, but a public hearing might help us flush those issues out for both the public and for us. So I think there's a reason to schedule it for a public hearing, because we're not bound to do anything after the public hearing. We don't have to take a vote on it. We can amend it, send it out for another public hearing. We can kill it then by a vote of the planning board. We've got all our options open. So I don't think there's any reason not to schedule it for a public hearing. I, for one, want to get it out of the planning board and onto the council if that's where it's going. And if it's not going there, that's fine. But you got to remember, this was a council-generated issue. This came from the council. So I'm not sure that there would need to be a petition. I think the council could take it up independently, all by themselves, without recommendation from the planning board. I'm not sure of that. but I know that it was council-generated.
It would
so-
either be action of the planning board or the potential of a citizen's petition to
Yeah.
put it directly onto
So-
city council.
So my thought is, we get this ball rolling, we get it out of here, get it to a public hearing, flush it out.
For clarity, explain to me again, earlier you mentioned if we send this for a public hearing, what happens to those properties?
They are in effect
Bound.
under the ordinance
Yeah.
at that point in time.
And so, yeah, I guess I really do have a problem with, sending it out for public hearing. I'm not interested in tying property owners' hands so that,
But if,
so that we can, again, we're talking about restricting the owners of one property.
what we're
The
talking about
city
is,
can do whatever they want.
what we're talking about is doing it for 30 days. After the public hearing, if the planning board chooses not to do anything, that's the end of it. If you don't want to recommend it to the council,
Why would we tie their hands for 30 days? Leave them unbound, let them do whatever they want.
because you
and
can't
then
get the
we'll figure it
process
out.
moving without a public hearing.
Well, maybe the process doesn't need to go anywhere.
Well,
I mean, the council created this situation, they passed it on to us in response to political pressure, and now it's before us, and for what it's worth, my opinion is, we have dozens of valuable historical assets in the downtown area. Certainly more than those that are within the current boundaries of the proposed district. And if you want to look at each individual building, there are some that might even qualify for registration of the National Historic Sites. So if we're going to call it a historic overlay district, then I think we probably need to do a more thorough evaluation of what that means and what properties would qualify and what benefit it would give to the community. Because if all it's going to do is add another layer of regulation to land use and unreasonably restrict the use and development of those properties, then I think it might not be a good idea. There's a difference between preservation and restoration, after all. Some of these buildings would not be good candidates for restoration. Though many of these buildings could last another 100 years if they were repurposed, though. Look at the car company buildings. They've all been repurposed quite successfully into residential and offices. There are buildings on Main Street right now that could be repurposed, and successfully. We have a major renovation going on, a refurbishment of the Colonial Theater that may well have long-term ramifications for downtown Laconia. May affect property values and intended land uses. So yeah, I think it started in the city council, and if the city council wants to continue to look into this issue, I think that's their purview. I think it's important, but if it's a planning issue, let's do it from a planning standpoint and not a pressure
Just
standpoint.
put in. So we started, I was on the committee, we started with those parcels just to start smaller. And then kind of let the committee choose from there what buildings by doing more research on that. But there is waivers built into this too that you can take a look at for
Sure.
certain circumstances.
I know you guys worked out on that, and I'm not diminishing any of the work that people have put into it. I'm just saying, if there's no need to rush, why rush? Just because it's more politically expedient? I don't think so.
that, it's not a question of political expediency. We've had this in committee now since when? I don't want to go back over the history, but for a while. It's not a question of political expediency. It's not even a question at this point in time of restricting landowners' use of the property while we consider this. I'm going to take on the role as the liaison from the city council and ask for some cooperation here in terms of moving this forward in a timely fashion and in a way that doesn't impact anybody in any significant way. So, if we schedule it for a public hearing, everybody does their due diligence and their homework, and we come back here and the majority of the planning board doesn't want to recommend it, that's that. If people think that it needs more work, it needs to be broadened, needs to be narrowed, needs to be less restrictive, more restrictive, then we take that action then. So,
what would your motion be if you made a motion, David?
send it to a public hearing.
Just to schedule a public hearing for
Schedule
next week?
schedule a public hearing on the Laconia Historic Overlay District.
And then we could have further discussion after that motion is made and seconded, right?
Yeah.
So that at least we'll know what we're talking about, because I may have gone a little bit outside the realm of that particular question. So would you like to make such a motion?
I will make that motion. I move we schedule this for a public hearing.
I'll second.
That's seconded by Sarah Jenna. Any discussion on the motion?
And that would be for the November 6th meeting,
Yes.
which is a Wednesday, by the way, because of the election.
I think my position is that I don't see the hurry I think this needs to be researched more. I think there's got to be an effort to speak to the property owners that you are trying to restrict, right? It's great, everybody goes by that train station, it's a beautiful building. I doubt they're gonna tear it down anytime soon. They may never tear it down, but that is their prerogative. I have never been a fan of somebody else telling me what to do with my property, and what you're proposing is let's restrict one owner. That's all you're restricting here. Because we, the people, like his property.
Well, that's
Go
what a
down
public-
Shore
that's what-
Drive, there's
that's what a
plenty of
public
houses I
hearing's
like
about.
there. Why don't we restrict them from doing anything with their property?
You're not restricting
'Cause I like
anybody
them.
from doing anything right now.
Yeah, right now. I just think it's a mistake to put this out. By sending this a public hearing, opening us up for a public hearing, we're restricting what they could do. Now that
30 days.
30 days is 30 more days, and I'm willing to restrict someone's property.
You just said nothing was gonna happen.
So then what are you worried about?
Okay, could
Then
we
what are you
just
worried
try
about?
to speak one at a time?
Again, I just think it's a mistake that we have a board that is now gonna try to vote on restricting one person's property. And if that were your property, I doubt you'd be sitting here going, this is a great idea, let's restrict what I can do at my house. That's really what you're proposing. So, that's my 2 cents.
David, I
It
mean,
is more than one.
Charlie,
property owner.
then David.
I just-
Go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you. This is something that a lot of people have been asking to be done for years. For years, this has been.
First time I've heard it.
That may well be, but I'm telling you that people have complained, have been concerned ever since 1969, 67. People have said, why the hell are they tearing these buildings down? What, can't we? And I'm talking, you can look right out the window there at the mill. You know, so people have said, can we do what they're doing in other big cities, real cities, where they've lost buildings that have a historical importance to the city, and they're saying, can we do something in Laconia to preserve some of these buildings? And I understand what you're saying, Ed, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, the people that bought the railroad station, I assume that's who you're talking about, the one building, they knew what they were getting into in that, because that building also has a long history. We almost lost that building several times, much to the horror of many citizens. And why back then the city didn't do something is beyond me. So now, I get where the council's coming from. I certainly understand where a lot of the citizens I hear from, who are very much in support of doing something. I am not in support, I'm speaking personally, Ed, I'm not in support of nitpicking things that people do to their buildings. And I was looking through this and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, okay, maybe. But the overall plan of preserving the buildings from the wrecking ball makes perfect sense to me.
And I fully understand that, Charlie, and I'm the first to say, if the public would like to get together and form some sort of committee.
They have.
To put together a fundraiser, to approach the owners of that property and put their money up
Yeah.
and say, we're willing to buy this property so that we can preserve it,
Right.
then maybe they'll sell it, the owners will sell it to them and let them preserve it.
Which is what they had to do with the mill. But the reality is, in the real world.
Nobody wants to spend their own money.
In the
Not
real
in my
world,
yard is
or-
what it
or-
is.
Or a lot of people don't have the money.
I think if they wanted to save it that bad, they'd come up with a
Or
way
they
to
could
do
rob a
it.
bank, I suppose.
Other than, again, other than sitting here going,
Yeah.
you, because you bought it, you own it,
Well,
and guess now we're gonna tell you what you can do with it.
So the
That's a
owners of the
problem.
railroad station can come to the public hearing and say, are you kidding me?
Should they have to?
Can we not do the crosstalk?
No,
I'm
so,
sorry.
so, Mr. Chair, I would just say that, so I'm in favor of doing the public hearing, and even after we do the public hearing, we can agree not to do anything,
Okay.
so, thank you.
David?
I want to call the question.
Okay. All right, the question's been called, it's not debatable. All those in favor of the motion to schedule a public hearing, please signify by raising their hands. Opposed? The motion carries. It's scheduled for November 6th.
What was the vote?
1, 2, 3, 4.
6 to 2.
5, 6 to
6
2.
to 2, okay, thank you.
Thanks. Sarah, I have one question. I know that, it's just a follow-up. Did the committee get any input from any architectural historians about the actual buildings themselves?
I
They
believe so.
did?
Tara would know that better. 'Cause I think
Sarah reached out.
Okay, I'll look
Got
into
some,
that stuff.
some
I love that stuff. All right, thank you very much. Oh, a note here, if there's anybody here on the Zion Hill Road, the Lakes Region Bible Church thing, that matter has been withdrawn at the applicant's request and won't be heard tonight, in case you're waiting. All right. All right, extensions, PL 2017-0088 SP and 0089 CUP, wetlands. It's 1212 to 1214 Union Avenue. It's 2 duplex condominiums, extension request for completion, looks like to November 3rd, 2020, for completion and Mylar and final plans. So we'll hear from the applicant. No applicant?
No, they just request an extension.
All right, so they don't have to come before the board anymore and ask for, explain it or anything?
They do,
They don't? They do?
yes.
Do we have to grant it if they don't appear?
No, but you should table it.
Can someone want to make a motion to table this?
I'll make a motion that we table PL 2017-0088 SP and 0089 CUP, a request for extension of completion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Bounds. Any discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by raising their hand. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, thank you. Okay. PL 2010-0010 SP, Scenic Road, it's Fletcher Lane, the lodges. Proposal to bring 3 structures, 72 units. The extension is requested till November 3, 2020. Ah, an applicant.
An applicant. How about that? Wonderful thing. Good evening, everybody. Chris Dupree on behalf of the applicant. Are you all familiar with where this property is located? If not, I can put a map up on the board, but I think you are.
Any members like them to put that up there? The chair is familiar with it.
Good, okay.
Go ahead.
Let's see. The zoning board extended zoning in July, I believe it was, through January of next year. And the state extended or renewed our alteration of terrain permit on this project. Excuse me. Other than that, I think, as everybody knows, we've been working along on other parcels at Scenic Road, along Scenic Road. We just finished up the last of the townhomes that we had under construction. That was an 8-unit project, and 5 of those have sold. 2 of them are under contract, so we've got one of those townhomes available now. The last kind of permit-related issue we have to complete is an extension of the sidewalk where it ends coming down the hill and headed towards the marina. We've been trying to get that done and haven't had much luck in terms of finding contractors that have been able to work it into their schedule at this point. You know, as it relates to this specific project, the Bluegill Lodge that was first developed was kind of a model for this. it hasn't sold as quickly as we would have liked. We still have 8 of those units available for sale, so that is, the time frame that it's taken to sell those units has, in combination with the current state of the economy and the construction market, has forced us to try to relook at this project and really figure out a more affordable way to develop it. Between the site costs, as I said, the current construction market, we're having a tough job getting the numbers to work. We are still committed to move forward with the project, and just trying to figure out how to make that happen. It almost seems like we need to have a recession hit to get a little more competitiveness in the construction market. I think if we're successful, which we fully intend to be, it will continue to be a win-win for ourselves and the city. I was looking at the assessed values of the current one building project that we did, and that currently those units are assessed for $12.8 million. So projecting forward, over 3 buildings out in the future, it's pretty easy to get to a $40 million assessed value of this project. And so as I say, I think it would be a win-win for the developer and the city.
So the difficulty is
Cost.
figuring out how you're going to afford it, is that right? How you're gonna make it cost effective?
Correct.
Okay. How many times has this been extended before? And is it essentially the same issue on each request?
No, the issue has changed significantly over the time. When we were developing the townhomes, we started permitting this project right away. The intent at that time was to go from the townhomes, as those sold out, to go across the street and develop this. We then had the opportunity to acquire more parcels of land along Scenic Road and develop those, which were smaller scale projects.
Well, nobody can take issue with the fact that you haven't been out there working and putting up stuff. Nobody can take issue with that. So, I was just curious. I mean, I'm inclined to grant this extension, but
Are there any other questions for the applicant? What's the staff recommendation?
There's no reason not to extend.
Okay.
He's been working diligently out there.
Yeah, it would seem so. Any other questions? How about a motion? I see Charlie's hand was up.
No, I was looking for my glasses on my head.
Ah. Don't all speak at once.
oh, I move, do we extend, what's the, let me get the
I'm looking for that right now.
PL 2010-00110 SP Scenic Road. I move we grant the extension until September of 2020.
Motion by Counselor Brown, is there a second?
Second now.
Second,
Excuse me, that was,
November of
November,
2020.
yes.
Excuse me.
Yep. Second by the Vice Chair. Any further discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by raising their hands. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We are moving on to a public hearing. PL 2019-0119, CUP Wetland, Outer Bridge Drive, Village 10. Proposal to cross a wetland to connect sewer lines. 300 square feet of temporary impact to wetland and 1,130 square feet impact in the buffer. We need to start with a motion to accept the application. Is the application in order and ready for acceptance?
Yes, it is.
All right, anyone want to make that motion? Motion to accept the application.
So moved. Let's get this cracking.
All right.
Let's get the hearing cracking.
Motion by Counselor Bounds. Is there a second?
second.
Second by Representative Charlie St. Clair. Any further discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by raising their hand. Opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. So, presentation from the applicant would be in order, I think.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is John Bernard. I'm here for MJ Farm Estates. And the reason why we're here is that we actually were going to bore under the wetlands that wouldn't require us to be here for that permit. But when we approached the boring company to do it, the tolerances were too tight. So that brought us back in front of you. And I think that's the only thing that has changed on it, is that we're looking for a temporary wetlands crossing. It's 30 feet long. The total impact is around 1,100 square feet. And here I am. It's pretty simple. I'll point it out on the plan. You may have some plans, but this is the crossing, very small area across it. Everything's already been built out. We're just here for that.
I didn't hear what you said. What was the reason the boring
The
company said?
boring company, when we brought them out there into the field, they couldn't make the tolerance. The tolerance is very tight for a storage line.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So it was, just, they couldn't do it. And the construction company and the boring company got together and said that we would have to dig it up and lay it in. That's the only way that we would hit it.
And then presumably you restore the wetlands. when
Of
you're done.
course.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we're gonna take a picture of it, and you have to put it back perfectly.
Every plant has to be in
match that
exactly the
picture.
same place.
I love planting daisies.
We're gonna count those tadpoles.
Hopefully we get through this, and the ground is still relatively dry out there right now.
Right.
So it's gonna be a very simple project. We expect to be in and out of it in one day.
Preferably not a rainy day.
Perfectly, not rainy day, because
All
everything's
right.
wet.
Are you gonna do it now? You gonna do it this year?
Yes, if I get your approval, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Yes, sir.
Is this required to finish that second parcel? The straight street?
Yes. Yeah.
This is required to
Yeah,
finish that, right?
otherwise you
You can't finish the
well,
drainage portion.
before we're aware that yes, that's correct.
I was just
Simple answer is yes.
Okay.
Okay. Well, why don't we open the public hearing then at 7:12 PM. Are there any abutters here that would like to be heard on this application? Please come on up to the microphone and give us your name and address for posterity.
They couldn't get this
Please.
Mr. Chairman and fellow board members, my name is Roland Ambiel. I live at 21 Freedom Lane. Been there for a little over 10 years. The developer used a nice word, a simple little thing. Well, that simple little effort is going to disturb wetlands that have been there forever. And who's to say it's gonna get put back in pristine condition? I mean, you guys made a joke of it somewhat, but, tadpoles, daisies, how about wildlife?
I think tadpoles are wildlife, but I'm
They
not an
are.
expert.
Turn to frogs,
We didn't mean to make fun of it or belittle it, sir.
But we live there, and as residents, we're dealing with, trucks going by every morning 10 times before 9 o'clock. That's all right. I understand that. But we're supposed to preserve wildlife and preserve wetlands. Are we doing that? I mean, I personally don't think so, but that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other abutters? Yes, please come on up.
Thank you. My name is Alice Wolf, and I live in one of the homes that faces the field and the little pond. And I have to say that the humor that was displayed with, yeah, you're gonna take a picture and make sure it comes back looking exactly like it looked, was a little rough landing for the people that live there. My question is, what exactly happens to the land that's there when you do put in this line? And is there a guarantee that it'll go back to what it looked like when it's done?
We can have the applicant explain the process to you in detail if you like.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
So in response to that, we're asking for a 12-foot swath. So what we do, we're only digging about a 4-foot trench, and we put the material next to it so we can put it right back in. So we actually use the same material that we take out to put back in, which is a hydric soil, which is why it's determined a wetlands. There's no water flowing there at this time, It probably does throughout the year on a heavy rainstorm or a spring runoff. But we're gonna do everything we can to preserve the material that's in there to be put back. And at the same elevation, in the same grade.
So in all seriousness, though, do you in any way inventory what the flora and fauna is before you dig that trench?
We don't, we'll actually try to peel off that top layer and preserve that and try to put that back on. There is a certain amount of disturbance that inevitably happens. I mean, I'm not trying to pretend like it's gonna be exactly, perfectly the same, but we're gonna do everything we can so the neighbors like us and we're not causing a problem for them.
What would be the alternative for the applicant if, for example, you weren't allowed to do this? What would, I mean, you're trying to connect up a dwelling unit or certain dwelling units to the sewer, right? The
Correct.
public sewer,
That's right,
sanitary sewer.
right.
So what would the alternative be? Would it be a leach field or?
No, we would attempt to bore and be very unsuccessful and be there a lot longer and do it attempt after attempt after attempt to try to get it as close as we could. That's what we would do if we didn't get this. So, and if you look in the plan, there's 2 spots where we can dig on each side of the setbacks in the wetlands that were the proposed area. We create more of a mess. You have a boring machine there. It's a longer process. You pump water through a boring machine and then you pump sludge to it when you try to pull it through. That's the process that we would go through. It would actually be more of an impact than allowing us to do it this way.
Is that deeper than the trench you would be digging?
It would be the same height, but you have to go back because you do it on an angle. If you take a look at what's happening out here on the gas line that they're putting in, it's that same equipment we would set up. That's boring equipment. So essentially, you drive a rod under the ground to where you want to go, and then you pull a pipe in there and you pull it back and you ram it. And they do it with sludge. They put a sludge back in there. But that's allowed because you're not disturbing the top of the wetlands. It's disturbing underneath it, but you're allowed to do that. So I would have preferred to have done that. I preferred not to be here. I already had my approvals. I didn't need to come back here. But when I bring the experts out into the field and say, this is what the engineer drew, and the gentleman who does the work and says, well, that's great, but I can't do that, I won't be able to hit the...
I understand your justification. I'm trying merely to address the concerns of the butters.
I live in their condominiums. I live in 38 Freedom Lane, too. I understand their concerns, so... What? Yeah, I do. I already have started moving in. I'll bring you there tonight if you'd like to come by. And you can see that I have a couple of beds set up in there. I bought the unit. You guys, you know what is interesting is that I really understand where you're coming from, and I'm trying to do the best I can for you. The road's in. We need to hook up to the storage. I'm not going to say anymore. That's what we have to do.
Are there any other abutters that I thought maybe there would be?
Sandy Ambio, 21 Freedom Lane. How close, I'd like to know how close it is coming to the house that's at the bottom of the hill.
I'll show you.
It's right on the plan. So here's the existing storage manhole that we're going to be putting into, and there's the existing house. This is done on a 40-inch scale, so I would say we're 40 feet, 35 to 40 feet away from the house.
So are you on the grasslands, or are you in the, where it's, I don't know what you want to call it, flora, fauna, whatever?
Well, okay.
Because there's
I'll
grass.
show it to you. I'm happy to explain it to you. So here's the side of the house, here's the field, here's where the road went in. We're gonna come up to this side of it, just dig out this side of it.
Is that grass there? I mean.
Yes, grass, yes,
Okay.
just grass.
I guess I don't understand why the original plan was done differently, and now, is it because of cost? It's
No,
gonna cost a
this is
lot more to
more-
do it the
this
other
is
way?
more- This is more expensive. Because this permitting process that you have here in front of you is $6,000, just for the paperwork.
And the other thing I would ask the board is that they hold in escrow the money to make sure that that is put back. Because if you went down and you looked at the area, if it is on the grass, that's obvious to anybody who walks down the street, drives down the street, that lives in probably 6 different houses. And I would like protection that that's going to be done as soon as possible and
Okay.
not left. If there's no escrow, there's no I know he's going to be moving into the area, but the intent is to build a house on one of those two streets. He is not going to be looking at what we look at. We're the ones who are going to be looking at it.
Well, this is just about the encroachment on the wetlands and the wetlands buffer tonight, not the.
Yes, but you also
Has-
have to put back some landscaping on top of that. How are we protected that he comes in right away in the spring and does something? You as the planning board can't control that?
Yeah, I will let the planning director jump in on that.
So the plan is for them to do the work in one day. And when they're done, they will take the exact same topsoil that was there and put it back into the area that they disturbed.
What if it rains? What if he gets delayed?
Then he
What
does
kind
it
of
the next
protection do we
day.
have?
He does it the next day. And we have a conservation technician who has already been out, checked his erosion control before he starts work, and we'll be out there to check it after the work is done. And then we'll be out for the next few weeks to check the vegetation to make sure that it's holding and that it's starting to grow back, et cetera, et cetera. And then we will monitoring it through the winter and again in the spring.
And when you say conservation, is that somebody from the Wetlands Board?
No, that's somebody from the planning staff who's,
So, can you answer me why wetlands isn't involved? I mean, that is definitely, if you've been out there, it's wetlands, it's a swamp.
well, but where he's digging is not the swamp that everyone is thinking of. It's not the pond, it's not the swamp.
How many
It's-
feet are you
there's a
talking now?
There's a drainage swale that starts on the other side of Outer Bridge, goes under Outer Bridge,
Mm-hmm.
and then down along the side of his project, and then empties into the pond.
Mm-hmm.
That's, the drainage swale is the wetland that he's digging in. He's not digging in the marsh, he's not digging in the pond, or any of those areas. It's
But how far away is he from that?
from,
From the pond, from the wetlands?
yeah, at least 100 feet.
Is it?
It said, most of the, ma'am, it says in the application that most of this is within what's called a buffer. It's not actual wetland, it's in an area that the state has designated as a buffer zone. And every property up there has been wetland mapped with the edges, right? So when they, as he said, he already had approval, he didn't have to come here tonight until the decision was made, for whatever reason, to dig a trench instead of go underneath. And then he had to come back in here for this approval tonight.
And he had to go to DES.
Yeah, he already had to go to
The
DES
Wetland
anyway.
Bureaus, the Wetland Bureau of
See, we've
DES.
not been informed of any of this.
But you received a letter from
After the
DES.
fact, only for this change, not for the original.
That was the only thing they needed to go to DES for.
Okay.
And so they've gone to DES, the Wetlands Bureau has reviewed this. They have the permit from DES to do this, and DES relies on our local staff to make sure that the conditions of that wetland permit are carried through.
In other words, we'll go back up there and make sure.
Okay.
And we already have money in escrow on this development.
You do, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. Are there any other abutters? Any other abutters? Any other members of the public that would like to be heard? All right, sensing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:24.
You have the staff recommendations. I think I've already covered pretty much everything.
Sure.
This is a fairly quick project in terms of this actual application. I will say that we've had several people come into the office to ask questions about this because they received notification from DES that they were going to be working in the wetlands, and of course, everyone took that to assume they would be down in the pond and the swamp, and I understand that because it was very unclear the way the letter from DES was worded, but there's already an existing sewer line which happens to go underneath the pond, And they're connecting to an existing manhole that's already there. So this is about as disruptive as you can get.
Not disruptive.
And for the butters that spoke here too, I'm looking at a 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5-page, 4-page environmental report that was done by Stony Ridge Environmental on this project. So, I mean, it's been looked at by people that know a heck of a lot more about all this than we do. I understand your concerns, absolutely. All right, what's the pleasure of the board on this?
Yeah. Jay?
I'd like to recuse myself from this vote because I probably live a little closer than those folks to this particular area.
Well, the record notes that
Sorry.
Jay has been recused.
Yeah, the country club is in their backyard.
Yeah.
So anybody else?
It sounds, and I'll look out to the audience here, just from what I've observed tonight, never mind what I've read, but it sounds like any issues should have been answered with regards to the abutters, some of their concerns.
We never knew anything about it.
I understand that, that much I get, but it sounds like your concerns have been answered. I'm just speaking from my observations, not just from what I've read here. And listening to the director here, it sounds like these people will be, the work will be observed. Any issues that come up, they'll take care of those issues and.
I tried to answer some of your concerns. For example, a developer has a need to lie by saying he lives there.
Well, listen,
It's not even germane
yeah,
to the
that's
issue.
not.
Yes, it is.
No, but sir.
How can we trust him?
Okay, I'm just concentrating on the actual issue, not about where people live or anything. I get what you're saying too, but it just, in any event, it sounds to me like everything's been,
So Charlie, did you want to make a motion or something?
I'm fumbling for my glasses again.
I'll make a motion
Thank you, sir.
that we approve PL 2019-0119 CUP, Outer Ridge Drive, proposal across the wetlands with temporary impact of the wetlands, with money in escrow to be held until it's determined that the condition has been returned to normal.
Subject to the escrow that's already on file, you mean?
Right.
Right, yeah,
Is
okay.
that right?
That works. Is there a second? Second by Mr. St. Clair. Is there any more discussion?
Yeah, I just want to.
Sure.
So Dean, I got from your conversation on this, so with regards to the escrow, that is given back at what point?
Completion, right?
It's given
sign
back
off
in
on it?
stages. So it's for the actual site work, which he has completed most of his site work from a standpoint, he's built the road, he's put in his utilities. This would be the finishing touches on the utilities. Once we get beyond that point, we would be refunding, and everything's okay, obviously, we do our inspections and then we would be in the process of refunding money. We always retain a certain percentage of it for landscape survival. We wait 2 years for landscape survival to make sure that stuff will grow and keep growing.
So that would be like where this ditch is gonna be.
Yes, exactly.
So, and also, obviously, the public is aware of the fact that if they see something that they think is not right, they can come to the office and,
Or give us a call, absolutely.
Just give us a call, yeah.
Yeah.
not us. them.
We're right down the street.
The collective us.
One of my staff members is in Southdown almost on a daily basis.
Okay, because it's important that, I'm sure that a lot of people weren't aware of the stuff they heard tonight, but it's important that they know that if they see something they're curious about or not happy about, that they need to get in touch with the planning department immediately. And then that can be rectified, passed on, whatever. So, okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by raising their hands. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we are on, new business, conceptual review, 1330 Union Avenue. This is Barton's Motel. Just found out about that one this,
While they're setting up, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
sure.
as the board will recall, over the summer, the city council enacted the performance zoning provision that this board reviewed in the spring. We are starting to see some significant activity, and how much of that is attributable to the passage of that performance zoning is unknown, but we do have some applicants that are looking to take advantage of it. This would be the first one that you've seen, and you'll have a second one tonight. From a conceptual standpoint, as part of the performance zoning, the first thing that needs to occur is they need to give the board a conceptual plan. This is not an engineered plan. We don't know anything
Right.
about utilities yet or anything like that. This is how it looks, where it is, what it's made of, and if you feel that this is a good idea, then you would give the approval to the conceptual plan, which tells them that they can go to the next step. Giving approval to the conceptual plan is not approval to any plan. It's just that giving them the approval to go to the next step, which would be, for all intents and purposes, a regular site plan
Right.
proposal, just like you would normally see. The only difference is that they may be asking for some relief from certain items of zoning, and that instead of going to the zoning board for those items, you guys would have the power to grant that relief.
So can we predict with any kind of certainty what kind of performance zoning considerations they'd be looking for?
They are willing, they are ready and able to address that question.
They will answer our questions, and they'll probably take our comments and suggestions back to the drawing board, so to speak, too, so. All right, well, welcome to our first performance zoning presentation, the history.
Sounds great.
We're not even within the historic district, so would you please continue? Go ahead.
Good evening, John Roque with Roque Consulting. I'm here this evening with Jason Lacombe, the architect from SMP, and Ralph Meisner, the developer of DHB Homes. This is a new multifamily condominium project that we're looking at doing in the commercial zone. It's located off of Union Avenue. The cemetery is to one side, and John's Corvette is to the other side, basically right across from Salvation Army, Barton's Motel. I'm sure everybody knows exactly where it is.
It's not Salvation Army.
No.
St. Vincent de Paul.
The proposal is for 32 condominium units, and it's gonna be in the form of 4 buildings. They're located along the lake. We're proposing each unit will have its own indoor garage, like indoor enclosed garage, and with a single space, and an outdoor open parking space to make up the 2 parking spaces for each one. We're looking at doing guest parking also to give some extra spaces for times when it's busy in Laconia, like it is during the summer. The units have all been set up to have views and decks overlooking Paugus Bay, and the views are pretty good. It's like a long stretch of Paugus Bay from this location, so it's some pretty nice views. The motel site needs to be basically completely demolished. They won't to accomplish this project. It's currently serviced by municipal water and sewer, so basically all the existing services will be demoed along with this. New connections made for the new buildings, and that'll be how we get everything taken care of that way. The existing beach is pretty nice. We're gonna that actually doesn't change at all with this proposal. There's an existing dock that will be upgraded, and we're looking at if maybe doing a second one. There's no way to get dock or mooring spaces for every single one of the 32 units, but we're very close to Irwin Marine and all the marinas downtown. we may end up having a certain number of dock spaces and using it as a day dock where people can get their boats and come over to the site and use it as a day dock situation too. State of New Hampshire, we need a shoreline permit for disturbance. We're gonna be disturbing out, it won't be within the 50-foot, but it'll be within the 50 to 100-foot, so we need a shoreline permit. We're gonna disturb over 100,000 square feet with the demo and the redevelopment, so we'll need a alteration of terrain permit. Actually, since we're in the shoreline, it's only 50,000 square feet, so we definitely need an alteration of terrain permit. Again, the site's gonna be permitted under the new, the City of Laconia Performance Overlay District. We've been in discussions with the staff already on this. We're trying to minimize anything that we have to ask as, you know, a performance item, but one of the things is, we need to be at 32 units to make the project financially viable. I think it comes in just slightly under that if you look at it in terms of, just the size of the parcel itself and divide by 6, so. That's one of the items that we're not asking for much, but we will ask for a little bit to get to 32 units. The site is really similar to what was done at Christmas Island, the lake houses at Christmas Island. In fact, I'm the same engineer, Jason's the architect that designed it, and the developer is the same developer. So we're gonna do something similar to what we did at lake houses at Christmas Island. And that's part of the name, Lake, what is it?
Lakeside at
Lakeside at Paugus Bay. Yep, I should know that, yes. Sorry. But with that, I can turn it over to Jason to start going through some of the architecture, which is okay.
I just have a
You can
question.
ask some questions.
You said the developer, does the developer now own this property?
No. Purchase and sales.
Okay.
Yep. The developer that's proposing it is the
They
same.
have this under purchase and sales
Yes,
agreement?
that's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Can we hear from the architect?
Yes.
Good evening. Thanks, John. So, again, my name's Jason Lacombe. I'm the principal with SMP Architecture. And I put together a brief little presentation just to walk through the site plan, which I believe you all have. Some technical difficulties, so I can't see what you see, but we'll just take a quick walk through. This is a panoramic.
Come around this side and take a look at our monitor here if you want.
Maybe I'll just look over.
You can speak into one of these other mics if you want. There you go. See, we're trying to be
Technology
accommodating.
challenges.
here.
Well, I do appreciate that. Thank you for your flexibility. Lakeside at Paugus Bay, this is a conceptual design package. We've been working on this since early August, I think. So we're in the big idea phase, but it's advanced enough where we felt comfortable coming to you folks and showing you the project. So we can go to the next one. So this is an aerial view of Paugus Bay. Go to the next one. This is our site location. As John said, it's the site of the current Barton's Motel. So that is the site of Christmas Island. That was the previous project we completed 5 years ago? 5 years, yeah. 5 years ago, which we thought was very successful. That was 16 condominium units. Those were duplex-style units for anyone who isn't familiar with it. So you would own the entire side. This project is similar to that. We can go to the next slide. So the Barton's Motel site has almost 180-degree view shed, as John said. And this was something that we really wanted to try and take advantage of. Obviously, lakeside living, it's really all about the view and access to the lake. So the current site plan, one thing that we really tried to remember was that setback off of the lake, so that 50-foot buffer zone that's really important to DES is something that we always want to keep in mind. But that set a primary building site. So this primary location was triggered by a couple of items. One was the desire to have the buildings in close proximity to the lake, but it was also a desire to have them as far away from the road, both for the impact on the road, but also the privacy of the residents. So we were trying to balance out those two components. That also created a secondary building site. As John said, each of these units will have private garages. Those garages are detached, so we separated all the garage units from the living units for a couple of different reasons. And then it also created buffer area, which is an expansion of the existing buffer that the motel currently has, so that vegetated buffer along the road. We're anticipating locating access to the site where the current curb cut is. Obviously, we'd be narrowing that from the wide amount of pavement that is there. And that leads to a site concept that you're seeing here. So, as John said, there are 4 buildings. We're doing great. We have 4 buildings. They're 4 stories. They have walkout basements onto the beachfront, the waterfront. So there are 2 units on each side. So as I said, similar to Christmas Island, each floor is essentially a duplex unit. It just happens to be 4 stacked. So each building contains 8 units in that. Our access, so we see a primary in and out access entry point for the site with a single path circulation. So this is in and out for the residents with parking alongside that. So each unit would have a dedicated garage space as well as an outdoor space. And as John said, in going through the design, our goal is to expand the surface parking for guests. So each unit would have a certain amount of guest spaces associated with it.
May I ask a question? I'm just curious. So the little retail shops that are there, that building, which is separate from the motel,
That's correct, yep.
that's gonna be gone?
That's currently the plan, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that has the sign on top of it, correct?
It does. The historic sign.
Oh, there are 2 signs, so.
Maybe we should suggest they keep it up there and
I have a
backdrop
question.
for the development.
Just in the talks, where are you thinking about fitting extra parking spaces in for the guest there?
I'll come point around here. So each of these 8 spaces, it's actually, this was an architect's fat pen site plan. So there's actually additional spaces. We think we can actually get 10 cars in each of those spaces that I only labeled
32
8.
spaces.
And then additional parking along these 8 spaces along the access road. So the goal was to have 8 or so additional spaces that would be for general use for guests, really for the weekend visitors.
I see you have trees along the the northeast boundary to prevent any site obtrusion or anything for the abutters on that side.
Yes, yep. So this is an existing tree line along the cemetery. We see additional plantings there. Again, that was trying to balance the privacy for the residents as well as the frontage on the street, trying to soften that edge.
Of course, the construction will probably make enough noise to wake the dead.
Well, hopefully not that bad. You'll notice here that there is a secondary exit, partially for resident access, but primarily for emergency vehicles, because we didn't want to pave enough property that we could turn a fire truck around. So this is, again, it's a preliminary idea, but we do see an exit-only secondary access point onto Union Avenue.
Okay.
So here's some views, which I believe you've seen from Union Ave. You can just click through these as you come in that main drive. So the building design was really trying to stay residential on the street side and then balance out the idea of more contemporary large glass open deck concept on the lake side. So they're a combination of those 2 components. We can just keep flipping through. So in the building design, again, we're on the street side, we're trying to stay residential scale, so horizontal clapboard siding, and then as you move towards the waterfront, they become larger open panels of glass with infill.
Can't imagine what those are.
Keep flipping through, you can see the open decks coming through, so just keep walking. We brought the roof line down, so the top floor, the 4th floor, is actually more of a penthouse style suite. This is the video if you click.
Yeah, I was wondering if that looks kind of like a gambrel.
Yeah, we were trying to bring that roof line down again. The building is 52 feet tall at the tallest point. So we were trying to just visually bring the scale of the buildings down to something that was a little more.
How big are these units?
They're between 2,000 and 2,100 square feet. And if we just click through, fingers crossed. So we just did a little drive-through video, so you can get a little sense for what the design concept is.
Looks like Navis Works to me.
Second home market picking a pickup. Well, that's kinda nifty, huh? Oh, I'm getting car sick. Geez, slow it down.
It's April, the trees are in bloom.
He speeded up on me, gosh. Digital graphics. There was a time when that little clip would have cost you about $80,000.
That was before my time doing this.
Well, some of us
Don't
are
worry,
older
I'll
than
try
that.
So you can see as we come around to the lakeside, again, as John said, the
Yeah.
goal of the project is to really preserve that waterfront, keep the dock, keep the beach. There's a lot of really good things on the site that we wanna work with, but then obviously make units that are all about lakeside living and the views and as well as privacy for the residents.
Is there a mooring field out there?
We were saying probably 8,900 grand.
So you're talking about expanding the lakefront use, the dock. Is the goal to give all these units a boat slip?
That has not been the goal that we've discussed.
No, it is unlikely that we would get anywhere near 32 spaces. What we like about the location is that you can literally walk to Irwin, you can walk up to Lakeport Landing. So what we envision is most people will keep their boats on a rack system at one of the local marinas, and then we'll provide at least 6 slips for day dock, so people can load and unload their boat, and then proceed off from there. And then return their boat up to Pogus Bay Marina, where I keep my boat, or any of the other marinas.
I have a question for, I don't think there's continuous sidewalk from there to Lakeport Landing or,
No. The sidewalk's across the street.
but I don't think it's continuous.
From that point, it is, all the way to Lakeport
It is
Square.
On the
It is,
opposite
it's
side of
wrong.
the street, yes.
Okay.
It's from Blaisdell Avenue all the way to Lakeport. Well, this brings up an idea that had been floated around and dismissed a long time ago, and that is, there's a short section of the old Lakeshore line that runs along the lakefront from Irwin's
Yeah.
to what used to be the railroad crossing by, where Burger King, the former Burger King location is. That would be perfect for these people walking to the marina concept. I bet there won't be too many people walking. And there's not enough room on this for you to come back to us and say, oh, we'd like to have a boat storage facility or something, right?
No.
No, we've had it with boat storage facilities.
Speaking of that, have you looked at the impervious surface, what it is now and what it will be? Are you gonna increase or decrease?
We don't have a full calculation. We just got the full survey in, this last week. So
Okay.
we're just starting to overlay things and actually like, lay out the parking and lay out the roads, where they're actually gonna be. And try to expand the parking and all that.
So-
But there's a decent amount of impervious on the site already with
Right.
the existing.
So I'm
hotels.
still not clear, what kind of performance zoning considerations will you be looking for? I'm not pinning you down.
So
I'm
far,
just trying to get-
just the couple extra units. I think it's, in the high 20s is what's allowed, and, we wanna go to 32. That's about it.
That's it so far?
That's it so far.
You don't anticipate anything else?
We're trying to get all the setbacks to work with the existing setbacks that are on record, and, I think that's where we're at. We're trying to minimize what we need, but, Dean had advised us that the overlay district did give us some flexibility, so, and you guys some flexibility.
Yeah. Have you considered doing something to decrease 52 feet seems rather high. Couldn't you make like a row of townhouses that are 3 stories rather than 4 stories high?
And you wouldn't get the quantities. We did look at doing duplexes, but you don't get the unit count.
Yeah, you end up with a lot more buildings to try to keep the unit count up without putting them into,
Oh.
grouping them into a smaller number of buildings.
So the way you figure it, you need 32 units to make this work. Is that right? Okay.
And you can't make that if you just, took this and flattened it out? Got rid of the gaps between the buildings?
Like a
No.
motel.
So,
Yeah, how many rooms are there?
So
You could just do what they did up the boulevard and just condominiumize the motels.
the buildings were designed with two goals. One is the spaces in between. Because they're essentially duplexes, we wanted to give as much exterior window space to every unit. These are anticipated to be a little bit higher-end units, so that is really a selling piece. Nobody wants a middle unit.
Gotcha.
And then the space, the 30 feet is actually a fairly critical number in order of maintaining fire separation distance. So it helps us keep our construction assemblies a little more reasonable.
Good answer. Thank you. Charlie?
I don't want you to laugh, Mr. Chair, because I know you will, and I don't snicker, okay? Because I'm gonna be serious about this. 'Cause you already touched on it. I'm just hoping, because there are people that feel, I've spoken to several people today about this project after it was in the paper. You're right, there's a big sign there that's facing, I think it's up on the roof there, over the retail spots. But there's also a neon sign out front that says Barton's Motel. And that is kind of a landmark for a lot of people. It's been here, I think as long as you and I have been around, it's been here. So they had the same kind of situation down in Portsmouth with you. Yokins, thank you. Yokins. Where they sold the restaurant, they tore it down, but everybody loved the sign. You familiar with that sign I'm talking about?
I'm not.
How about you, John? You familiar with it?
Nope.
Oh, goodness.
It's gone now.
Oh,
Charlie.
no, the sign is not gone there.
It's back.
The sign
Still
is
there.
there.
Yeah.
They left the sign in
Yukins is
all its
gone, but
glory.
still-
And, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the properties behind it, because the restaurant's not there. But the sign is still there because it was a landmark for so many years.
I gotta drive by there.
And so, which, Yokins?
So what are you
Please.
proposing,
Well, I'm
Barton's
asking-
Lakeside at
I'm
Buggers Bay?
I'm asking that they think about it, that's all. They think about maybe leaving that neon sign up and just making it, for what it is. I'm not asking you to change the name of the project, the Barton's Lakeside condos or anything like that. I'm just saying to consider it, that's all.
Charlie, you gonna pay $900,000 for an apartment so you can look out at a neon sign?
Actually, the sign doesn't face them, it runs this way, so it's no,
It's not the big Barton sign.
They're
he's
gonna
talking
pay those
about.
kind of bucks so Charlie can go by and
Yeah,
reminisce
exactly.
about the sign.
Well, you guys can snicker all you want, but
I'm
I'm
not
just telling you,
snickering.
I'm
I'm
just
having
telling you,
fun
that
Sitco
that is
sign.
something that, you have the Sitco sign, exactly. So I'm just saying, just to think about it, that's all. If, I don't think that, it would necessarily take away from a project, and I don't think it's gonna be interfering with anybody's view of Union Avenue or Union Diner or anything else that's over there. I'm just,
Actually had discussions about that, and there's been conflicting opinions. We've had a positive opinion, we've had other people who've had
Actually, it's
less
on
positive.
top of the,
Oh, it's over here.
it's right
It's
there.
that
We
thing.
could discuss
right
it.
there.
So it's on
Well,
top
that's
of
the
it.
real
Putting
sign.
it basically adjacent to the cemetery, which is where it's located now,
You
would
could
be in the
usually
green
couldn't see it
space, and it's really.
no, that's a different sign.
And that's going down.
You're talking about the big Barton's?
No, I'm talking about the neon sign that lights
It's
up.
not neon, it's an interiorly lit, isn't it?
No, it's neon,
Is it neon?
yeah. It's right in the front.
Smaller sign?
It must be very memorable.
Is it
No,
that
not-
sign?
not- No, that's a nice one, that would be great too.
Where is it on this picture? Where
So
is it?
you're not referring to
It's
the
that thing you were
Barton's
just tapping
Motel
on, I
sign?
think.
No, but that would be great, that would be great.
Is that Google
That
Street
sign
View?
right there is right
Yeah,
there.
I was talking about the one right
That's
here.
right, have it
I
delivered.
was talking about the one in the front, the big, because I didn't think the big one would be doable. I mean,
I
that-
think Representative St. Clair's comments were, would you
Okay.
keep it in mind?
Okay, sure.
All right.
yes, that's the one right there. That's
Yeah,
the one
on
I
the
was
street
talking
side.
about
Referring
there.
to the neon
No, the
sign.
big one, the neon one would be, that would be a home run for a lot of
I'm
people,
gonna
so.
need your address. I can ship to you.
I could sell that for a lot of money. I could too. So, anyway, that's not, I'm just saying,
Honestly, the smaller sign could
Yeah,
be-
it look really good on the roof of the antique center, wouldn't it?
And I'd be very amenable to that.
well, if you could just
Obviously-
consider all the above, I would
Absolutely.
greatly think that would be, good for you.
Absolutely.
John,
you.
I have a problem with the 52 feet height and how close they are to the lake. You know, it's just, I think it's too high and too close. I just want you to know.
The 52 feet is at the tallest point, and so it's not on the street side, it's on
The lakeside.
it is on the lake side, yeah,
And-
at the loft piece, and it's from the lowest point of the grade.
I understand, but then, how's the cellar space gonna work? It looks like there's a whole nother apartment in the cellar. Is that gonna be shared with the units?
Currently, the ground floor units have a second level down, so
I see.
they're up, down, so they have 2 levels of exposure to the lake, is the current concept.
I
So
understand.
those ground floor units are a little larger.
And then from like halfway towards Union Avenue, that's where all the mechanicals and the elevator room and all the stuff for the building is gonna be in that front portion of the,
Right,
the
right.
street side of the
So
building.
the ground floor units get a bonus,
Yeah, they get a bonus, they have 2 levels.
and, okay.
Have you looked at the buildings in the former Burger King location and how high they are?
How high are they?
36 feet.
33 feet.
33? So currently, those 2 things are 33?
That's all those are?
Yeah.
They look high.
Look higher than.
So these are gonna be 56, you said?
52.
52. And they are gonna have elevators, I was gonna
Yep.
ask that. Okay.
Yep, they'll have elevators. And the way it's set up, we're working out the interiors of them right now. We've had discussions with the fire department and the building department, but, the way we have it set up, the elevators, there's no hallways in these units. When you come out of your elevator, you're in your unit at your level, so.
Got it.
I know there was mention of this in the article, but, and there was a comment, but there's short-term proposals before the city council now in terms of short-term lodging. And I just want you to be aware of that, because this might be an opportunity that somebody says, well, I'll buy that place and I'll rent it out,
Our plan would be to do the same thing we did at the lake houses at Christmas Island, no short-term rentals.
Okay.
That's that?
That's a good answer, because that was gonna come up.
That was the answer I got from the paper.
People that are gonna be coming up here are gonna be coming up here on the weekends. I think you'll probably have 30 to 40% living there. 50, 60% of the people are gonna be weekenders, they're gonna be coming up here because they wanna be on Lake Winnipesaukee. And this is gonna be, in my opinion, a beautiful site, nice buildings, well-designed, and I don't think you can beat the location. You are convenient to everything there.
Well, I think it is gorgeous.
Terry's a quiet neighbor.
It's beautifully drawn, thought-out plan. The only thing is, I guess I would have to, right, it's essentially 5 stories with the basement level, and we were just discussing a couple of meetings ago, the fact that we rarely think of it from the terms of the visual aspect from the lake. When we were doing a certain boat storage facility on Paugus Bay. And I know there isn't much you've already explained the economics of this, and I know there isn't much you can do. But it's the only thing about this that troubles me, is how it looks from the lake. And people come up here to enjoy the lakes. And poor people come up here to enjoy the lakes. And it doesn't, certainly, this won't enhance their enjoyment, that's all. That's all.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I just want to point out that the underlying zone here is urban commercial.
Right.
And a 60-foot height is allowed
Oh,
in that zone without performance zoning or without a variance.
please don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying that, that is a valid concern that people have raised. They're under the current economics and the law, there isn't much that this board can do about it. But if this board isn't concerned about such things, what other board would be? Nobody, we don't have any aesthetic power to be, but somebody needs to, we need to at least provide a forum for that, that's all. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Or comments?
Looks like a great project.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, is that Mr. Barton sitting back there? Is that the owner back there?
Where?
No, I didn't know if anybody from the Barton family was actually here tonight, because it is a part of our history around here.
Do you need a vote on this?
No.
Yes.
Yeah?
Take my lead from him.
All right, so.
So you alluded to it, Mr. Chairman, earlier. So there's a few options here for the board at this point in time. The first option is to say, yes, we like the plan and we approve the conceptual plan. The next option is the same thing, only we approve the conceptual plan, but we think you should do X, Y, or Z. The next option would be not to approve it, but to give suggestions on how to get it to a point where you could approve the conceptual
So I
plan.
was partially correct.
Yes, you were.
All right. And so the second option is basically a conditional approval. You said with conditions or with suggestions.
With suggestions.
Which would have the force of law, basically, then.
Yeah, we would have to work with the applicant to
Yep.
get that before you.
Well, given the options, I would think that the board would want to just take a vote on the conceptual plan, period, because the details all need to be fleshed out before we're going to actually vote on the details.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not in a position, based on this lovely slideshow, to make any more specific recommendations than, gee, it seems a little high, or what kind of trees do you want to use?
And they're just getting their surveys back now.
Yeah, so, I don't know, for what it's worth, I would suggest that we either vote her up or down tonight.
So if I can just add
Sure,
something
Brett.
in there, so because those concerns were raised, that's just a red flag moving forward. My thing, I mean, I know where this is, and I realize the height thing and from the lake, not too many poor people are gonna see it from the lake, but if there is any place across Paugus Bay, public areas where you can site this in, maybe some line of sight or elevation things showing, just to alleviate some people's things, saying that, you're not really gonna be able to see it too much unless you're at the end of this street or over here. Of course, if you're in a boat, anything that sticks up above any trees right there, you can see, but.
Oh, you're gonna be able to see this from across
Yeah.
the lake.
Oh, you can see
You're gonna be
everything,
able to
because
see it from-
everybody that owns something on the lake wants to look at the lake.
You'll be
So
able to
no
see it
matter-
from
I-
Samberton. most
I was
likely.
on the Mount Washington, and every house along the shore you can see, because they wanna see the lake. So I'm just,
Especially if we put this giant neon sign up on the roof.
I'm just
put the
saying
word
that as,
sign up on top
I'm
of
just
it.
saying that
Right on
as
the
a
top.
recommendation, as
Like the
part of the
cherry.
plan, it might answer a lot of people's questions if they can see, hey,
Charlie, I love it. that you-
unless I'm on a boat, these are the only areas I'm gonna look
I
at.
did not snicker, Charlie.
And from me being a quarter mile across the lake,
Didn't
this is
even
what it's gonna
react.
look like, line of
Scale of
sight.
it, looking
Yep,
across the
yep,
lake.
yep.
I would definitely suggest you think about the architectural views too, because line of sight's gonna be critical for the public hearing, and also line of sight from the lake's gonna be critical for the public hearing.
So what's
I
the
think.
pleasure of the board?
I move that we, give, approval to this concept. It's a good idea. It's good for the city. It's good for everybody. Let's rock and roll. Let's go do it.
Taxpayer.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion that's been made and seconded. The motion is to approve the conceptual plan, not to approve the project. Everyone understand that?
Yes.
All right, so first step, yes, discussion. Charlie?
So I just will emphasize everything that's been said, I guess. I rely on you guys to take everything serious. I mean, whether people were making sport of it or not, one way or the other, but I think everything that was brought up are all good concerns. And I can assure you, there will be people from across the bay who will call the troops out to complain about the height. But that's their prerogative to do that, so.
Well, just as there will be people that will bemoan the loss of the signage. I mean, I still call the Irwin's used car lot Grand Union, right? So it's before everyone's time. Change is hard to accept. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by raising their hand. Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Namaste.
So what was the vote?
It looked unanimous to me.
Mike,
One,
Becky did not.
okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1.
One.
Thank you.
No, 1, 2, 3,
Thank you.
4,
6
5,
to 1.
6 to 1, okay.
We lost Sarah.
We lost Sarah.
We did lose Sarah. She had someplace to go, or?
She's got kids.
Okay, we have another conceptual. 111 Church Street, conceptual review conversion to residential units. I'm told this is the former mental health center,
oh, yeah.
which directly abuts the
Is this the former mental
CVS.
health center? Is this the former mental health center?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Why, you don't have one of those high-tech?
We go out of order.
I have the plan to put up, but I don't have the color picture.
No.
It's a residential, huh? Right, okay, so.
It was an addition.
Oh, there's one of the Allens.
I can put up a big plan, and we can just work off in that right there. For the record, my name is Kevin Morissette. We purchased this building a while ago, been deciding what to do with it, and we've decided the best use would be residential. Presently, the building, it looks like this right now, and from the exterior, it really wouldn't change. We're proposing to put 12 units into this building and also build a new 4-unit building on the site to have a total of 16 units. We would have 16 garage spaces in 3 different locations. And again, the performance zoning is coming into play, and I'd ask to come in before the board because we do have some issues with a couple of things that we would need some guidance on to go forward.
Interesting lot configuration. You've got that little dogleg between the property that fronts on Union and the properties that front on.
But presently, there's the
Church.
building with 66 parking, there's 66 paved parking spaces with the building right now.
Okay.
But if we looked at this, this is an existing building, and then we're proposing 3 garages, and then down in the rear, a new 4-unit building.
So we might pick up a little bit of green space and lose a little
Correct.
impervious.
We would have enough parking places for each unit, 1 for each unit, and then we'd have some additional parking, but we would be eliminating some of the
So
asphalt.
Kip, what were the issues that you wanted our input on?
Well, just a couple that I'm aware of, but then Dean can maybe help me. The proposed 8-unit garage,
Yeah.
we'd like to be 5 feet off the lot line on the side. We'd line up with the front of the building and be 5 feet off. By being 5 feet off, we could still have the 24 feet coming in, the access, where the access comes off Church Street right now, and the existing parking that's there where the handicap spots are. We'd still have 24 feet of width to turn into the garages.
So you'd be, what's the setbacks in there?
Well, that's
Supposed to be.
one of the issues we're here tonight for, to try to.
Okay. Well, tell us, what?
Well, maybe Dean can explain it better.
It's a little complicated in that, in the urban commercial zone, for an existing building, or for an addition, the setbacks are the average of the two lots going in either direction of the street. So next door you have CVS, which has very large setbacks, and then going the other direction, you have a couple of multifamilies that are fairly close to setbacks, so it's,
The average
yep,
of the lots on either side?
2 lots on either side.
Who
But
came
how
up
does
with
that-
formula?
How does that affect the dog leg portion?
It would be for the frontage,
Oh, I see. yeah.
just what's on Church Street, so it would be the 2 lots, as you're looking at the plan, the 2 lots to the left, and then, in theory, 2 lots to the right. There is only 1 lot to the right, so it is what it is.
I mean, basically, everything is fairly close to Church Street, except for CVS. When you throw the CVS into it, it seems like it's
So you say 5 feet, is that to the property line?
from the rear of the garage to the property line.
And then how, on the Church Street side, and we're looking at the Allen property,
Yeah,
how many more feet from the property line to the side of their building?
right.
I mean, in other words, what would you end up with a resulting gap between the 2 buildings?
I mean, I'm not exactly sure, but
Roughly.
their building, I would say, is at least probably 25 feet off the lot line.
Don't they have a driveway
They
there?
have 2-car parking right there in the
Okay.
front, so.
So there's a car parked there. So
and,
that
you know,
might be,
In all honesty, I think the garage, looking at the rear of the garage is probably as attractive as, the cars pulled in, the tree line, which is very brushy, sort of.
yep. yep. Um,
And on the other side of the zoning, I mean, we can be just a couple feet off, because I believe that's commercial that butts up against the,
Buyer's agency.
yeah,
On the back garage you're talking about?
correct, because that's in
And
the
commercial,
commercial
you
zone
can build
there.
right up to the line, right?
And then, the existing, the new 4-unit building, we meet the setbacks, it's my understanding for there.
Yep.
It's just that this average of this new performance zoning with the CVS building thrown into the
How
thing
big are
is just-
these units gonna be?
In the existing building, they're gonna be 12 units. 8 of them will be 2-bedroom units, and 4 1-bedroom units, all under 1,000 square feet. The existing building is roughly 13,000 square feet. We're
Yeah.
proposing 12 units.
There's a hell of a demand for
So
that.
you're gonna be, it's gonna be 1,000, everything's gonna be under.
Well, yeah, it's probably gonna be 8 or 850 for the 2-bedroom, and probably, 7, 800 for the 1-bedroom. Again, it's just gonna,
What
the
about
way they lay out, it's just kinda gonna be,
utilities, the existing utilities sufficient?
we'll be putting in all new electrical service
Right.
for each of the units. It has natural gas. We're gonna put in separate furnaces for each unit.
So the whole site will be gas?
Yeah, natural
Huh.
gas, yeah.
Yep. What about storm drainage? What's there? Is it adequate?
We believe it is. There's an existing line, and the other thing too about the garage, if you looked on the sheet that has existing conditions,
Yep.
you'll see the drain line goes right down the middle of the parking and then right down towards the back. And
Oh, yeah.
so we didn't have to get into that drain line,
And there's
again,
what?
keeping 5 feet off.
2 catch basins?
Yeah, keeping 5 feet off that rear of that garage is another reason too, with the existing drainage right there.
So is the building that's there now, is that gonna change dramatically?
None. We're gonna put new windows in it. It's gonna look just the same. We're gonna put new windows in it. Other than that, the exterior, it's all masonry. It's gonna stay the same.
But you're gonna have to run sewer back to that far residential.
Correct.
And so the only issue you bring for performance zoning is the setbacks?
The
is that-
setbacks, again, I don't know if Dean can, I don't know.
Any other issues besides the setback?
From a conceptual plan standpoint, no.
From a performance zoning exception standpoint,
We haven't done all the calculations, but we don't believe so. I don't think that there's anything else.
okay.
When, the performance zoning, does that take into consideration economic data, housing markets, the need, the relative need?
Under the master plan, we have identified a need for mid-priced housing. This project is certainly
These would
right
be
dead set in the
moderately
middle of
priced,
that.
I would
Yep.
imagine, yeah.
This is not low income or subsidized, and this is not the high-end stuff either.
This
It's
is
right in the
exactly
middle.
what we need in Laconia.
Exactly.
When was
Exactly
the
what we need.
existing building built?
1975.
Yeah, I was gonna think, what was there before that? I don't remember.
Can you put the Barton
Probably
sign
single
on top?
Yeah.
Dean, are there,
Says an outlet
are there
line.
parking
How about the
spot
flora and fauna while we're at it? We'll
requirements
just piss everybody
per
off.
bedroom? Or how do they go?
I
Per
forgot.
unit?
We will look at the parking. I'm not sure that what's represented on the proposed plan will be enough parking, but there's room to do additional parking spaces and still have less pavement than there is now.
You're only proposing one parking place for one unit, right?
That would be in the garages. There's gonna be additional parking that we would still keep, like in front of the building. If we looked at the one that has the 8-car garage, we would still keep
Right.
where it's handicap parking.
Yep,
We
that
would still
row.
keep those spaces there. We probably would eliminate a couple in the front, closest to Church Street.
Well, ultimately, wouldn't you be looking at like 24 spaces?
At least, yes. But there's 66 in there now.
Okay.
So even if you figured two per unit, you'd have 32 spaces, so and half those are gonna be in garages, so we're looking at having 16.
So how does
So you think you
performance,
can get the 16 without parking them on the street? Is that where we're going here? You can get,
each unit would have a garage space, right?
Right,
One-
and there's
one and a
eight,
half
there's
per
eight
unit.
spaces right in front of the existing building that could stay right there.
okay, so you got 16 units. Ultimately, you're gonna be looking at 2 people living there with automobiles.
Spots.
So you'll be looking at 32 spaces.
And I think it
And
calls,
some people may go solo, who knows?
I think it calls for 1.5 per
Yeah.
unit, so, you could be, according to the regulations, we could be at 24 spaces and meet the regulation.
And still not be afoul of having to invoke performance zoning, right?
I don't think, parking is part of performance zoning, but that would be one of the things that we would work with the applicant
Okay.
to get the best possible scenario.
Because the reality is, most will have 2 cars.
For
More than
this
likely.
kind
And
of,
visitors.
for this kind of an apartment, I think, and for particularly the 2-bedroom units, I think you're right, that, we'd have to plan
Visitors can park
on
on
2
the
cars
street.
per
It's the
unit.
overnight parking that's like,
I don't know.
You can go to the Brookfront.
I don't
But
know.
anyway,
Doesn't
I'm
matter.
sure we would
They
have
would make the
32
numbers
spaces, because
Under
we
the
got
existing
66.
ordinance anyway. Right.
We'd be taking out some
I
asphalt.
think this would be a good project, Kevin.
It
So-
is, but I'm on the zoning board, and somebody 3 months ago came forward and tried to change this to residential, and the zoning board turned them down.
That's correct. There was no performance zoning in effect at the time. It was strictly a matter of timing,
I see.
poor timing on his part.
Can we get 24 parking spaces in here? That's the
Oh,
question.
yes, easily.
Absolutely, because if you take the garages we have right now, that's 16 units,
Right.
and there's 8 spots right in front of the existing building that would stay, where the handicap spot is right there. We've got just about
And we pick
24
up a
right
lot of
there,
green space.
Get 24 without,
Looks good.
without shuffling around anything else, and if we,
Okay.
So other than the change of use thing, what advantage does performance zoning present to you as a developer with whom we've worked and trusted for years? How does it help you on this particular project?
it would allow us some flexibility in the setbacks, and, to come up with a good idea, if everybody felt it's a good idea, that
you know, it goes through with not having the little things that used to hold up a project because of, you know, gives you a little flexibility.
Yeah.
And we're just getting into it. I mean, you know, I spent some money to bring it to this point, and I just didn't feel comfortable going any further until, you know,
No, I
met with
understand.
Dean again and met with the board, and I appreciate the board getting me in here with just a few days' notice
No, that's fine.
to
We have
see
no
which
problem
direction
with
I'm
that.
going in.
I really like what you're doing. I think doing that downtown
Yes.
changes things in terms of.
David, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I
Wait,
move
Can
to.
I just ask a question first? So the last one, the performance zoning issue, was the density. This doesn't come close to needing some kind of density?
No, because under the performance zoning, because they're building the new building in the back, they're adding additional floor space, and as long as it's 3,000 square feet of new floor space, which I don't think they'll have any problems meeting that, then density is higher.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
David?
I move that we approve the concept.
I second that.
Any further discussion, questions? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. And this time, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Rock and roll.
Do you need these back, or
Nope, that's fine.
who paid for it?
Take one and pass around down, please.
Got some up.
I do.
Ah, yes. I recognize that phone pole anywhere.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What is this?
This is 200 Garfield Street.
Street.
Yes, it is.
I was gonna ask you about that. I
Oh,
don't have to.
So- after the last meeting, I had several discussions with Mr. Dunn about this. And I know that he's spoken with Dean, and so I'm curious to know what has transpired.
Has everybody got their sheet there? So on the first page, which is the existing conditions, you see the fence and the pole.
Yeah.
After much discussion with the parties involved, with a lot of words that had absolutely nothing to do with the real issue, but we finally got to the real issue, and that is the pole. In that when people are going out of this driveway, and they have particularly if they're hauling a trailer, they have a tendency to swing away from the pole and out into the opposite lane of Garfield Street, which is narrow. Not unique or unusual in the city, but it is narrow.
Yes.
So that's the existing conditions. And as you remember, your approval was, please have DPW take a look at it. So you go later in the little package I gave you, there's a memo from Wes Anderson, the Public Works Director, but I would draw your attention to the second page, which is the white one with my hand scratching on it. And basically, we have the pole, and the green line is the fence, and the black line is the current pavement. And it's not as rounded as that in reality.
Were you having a seizure or something? when you
Yeah, I
drew
was,
that?
and then the suggestion from the Public Works Director is to have them eliminate some of the pavement of their driveway that leads back to the condo property
On the corner?
on the
I
corner.
mean, the red stuff.
red
right?
The red stuff, and create a little bump out, so that it would force people to, as they're leaving the driveway, to be a little further to the left in their driveway, and they've got a very wide driveway, it's almost 30 feet of pavement. And then create a bigger arc around the pole, so that they don't have that sense that they're going to run into the pole, and they would not have to then go into the opposite lane of Garfield Street, in theory.
So, if I may, when you say create a bump out, are you talking about putting a physical bump out there? Is that
Yeah,
what
they
you're
would,
talking about?
yeah,
Like a
they have
curved
they have an
corner?
asphalt curb there, they'd have to put out the idea would be to,
Extend the curve,
yeah, move the curb out a little bit, 3-4 feet, so that you,
not like things they put
no,
up
no,
on-
not these little like they do at the crosswalks. No, just a gradual, just to kind of force the
Yeah.
trucks over a little bit to the.
Does Cal Dunn think this is good?
This meets with, this, yeah, Mr. Dunn believes this would work. Now, so that's the proposal, that's the solution from the Public Works Director. The city is not going to do this. This would be on the applicant if you require the applicant to do this. We can make it a friendly suggestion, or you can modify
You're saying the city's not gonna do it, you mean the city's not gonna pay for it?
city's not gonna pay for it. It's
But
not
if-
on city property, it's on private property.
All right, so he would have to hire somebody to do it, the city's not gonna have anything to do with it.
Correct.
The city doesn't even maintain past this intersection.
I understand that, and if I recall, he indicated that they would be willing to pay for something like this.
So, what shall we do?
I don't recall whether he did or he didn't.
I do recall
Okay.
that, and in a discussion with him down at the site, he.
Can we do anything with this
re-emphasized it.
tonight? Don't we need the applicant here?
We don't have to do anything, do we? You said it's all on private property.
You don't have to do anything, you could just let it stand. You could, I would suggest not doing it tonight, but getting the applicant here, but you could amend your approval, the condition of the approval, that we give you your approval for what you want to do with your plan, but you got to do this.
Okay.
I'm not in favor of amending what we've approved.
I'm just saying.
We already
tho-
approved
do
Mr.
private
No's.
Those are your options, I'm just
not-
saying, you know.
But I'm just saying, and I don't think we should do it tonight, we should have the applicant here.
Okay, that's
when
fine.
we do it.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Who owns that street?
The
Is it a condominium?
the building
We approved it.
Yeah.
actually owns it. It's a right-of-way across its property, but it is maintained by the three condo
So
units.
it's kind of a common amenity for the,
Correct. It is their driveway.
Cal's objection.
So are you saying that
All very well.
Yeah.
Okay,
the
so-
applicant would pay for this, or the condo association?
Correct.
right.
Correct for what? Wait, Mike.
Well,
One or the
one or
other
the
or
other.
both.
We don't care which one, but yeah.
Well, I guess I would agree with David's suggestion that we don't deal with it tonight. I appreciate you following up on this. I know that Mr. Dunn would be happy to know that it made it onto the agenda tonight. And I had several long discussions with him about that.
Not gonna be happy with what I tell him, but that's okay.
Well,
There's no need to tell them anything.
there's
He
really
told-
nothing to say except, see you next meeting.
He said that
If
they
they
would pay
cut
for it.
across, if they cut that corner anyway, they're
private
just gonna go
property, so
over
there's
the
nothing to do
curb
with it.
with the back wheels of
The
their trailer
applicant
anyway.
wants to pay
Why don't they
for it.
just
That's
paint
between
lines
them.
there
Between
and
them.
drive over them
But I'm
anyway?
not gonna get in
Cal
that.
said he was gonna pay.
I'm just
Well,
saying
there's that.
the
That's
rec-
why I was against this whole
We could
DPW
have Dean go down and
review,
draw the lines
because
on the road.
It's private property.
He wants to pay for it.
The recommendation is, from the Public Works Director, was to
That's what it is.
modify the curbing
The
to
applicant shouldn't have a
just
problem
bump it
with
out a few feet.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that.
Okay, I'm-
Where are we now? We're off the rails completely. That was the third conceptual.
No, that was old business.
Okay, that's old business.
Okay, you're not leaving, are you?
Planning Department report.
I am leaving.
Are you leaving?
I'm leaving.
What about our short-term rental dilemma?
Well,
Wait, because I was gonna ask that question too.
What do you wanna do with that tonight?
No, it's not on the agenda.
I'll tell you where we're at.
That's old business.
So we presented what the board approved, recommended to the city council, and there was a couple of main aspects that
I suppose I should stay for this.
I'll tell you-
some of the council members disagreed with, and specifically disagreed with eliminating the number of individual rentals. And also disagreed with having it in all zones. Their idea is to limit it to the CR and the commercial resort and the single-family, shorefront residential, which is basically everything up at the Weirs.
So not commercial residential.
Yes, the CR zone and the SFR zone, which is
That's not
Weirs
my,
Boulevard
that's
and,
not my read on it.
and then And then the other residential zones would not be allowed except for in an owner-occupied type situation.
So the owner would have to live there in the house.
Similar to Guilford's.
So I couldn't buy a house, live up in Meredith or wherever.
Or even next door.
Or even next door, and have a house strictly to run as a commercial entity, basically.
Except
Correct.
in the CR.
CR and SFR,
Yep.
yes.
But right now, in a residential zone, I can own a house and not live there and rent it out for a year.
Yes.
Yes.
And there's nothing.
You rent it out for
there's-
180
There's
days.
nothing in the ordinances that says that I can't rent it out for a week at a
Yes.
time.
Well,
No.
they wanna
Yes.
make it against.
They want to make it against it.
No, under the current interpretation of the current zoning, renting it out for less than 184 days, whether it's 1 week or 1 night or 183 days, constitutes a rooming or boarding house. And that is not allowed in most zones of the city.
So everyone along the lake is
And that,
in violation.
that's why that case
If
was
they're
important.
if they're not in one of those
Important,
zones.
yes.
Yeah.
So they wanna so they just wanna allow it in these two zones, but if you live in your property, then you can rent the other half out
Could let the other half out, or,
in all zones.
You could-
yes.
But you have to, there was something in there, as long as you live in that residence for, what is it, 150 days a year?
Yeah,
184.
yeah, I don't know exactly.
I don't
but-
know how the numbers are gonna shake down.
Everyone's
here.
trying to
Yeah.
figure out a way to make it foolproof,
And this is still,
yeah.
Uncharted
the council
territory.
hasn't really done it, but basically the council said, no, we're not going to make it open-ended. In other words, what the planning board sent to the council was no holds barred, you could rent like this to anybody all the time. That's how the
Right.
council interpreted it, and the council said no to that. And sent it back to the planning department to figure out what kind of conditions we might be able to put in. I'm not certain that residential, but you gotta live there, is the end of that. I'm just telling you.
I'm not sure that's legal, and I have a meeting with our legal counsel on Thursday to discuss that.
Yeah.
But
I
for the
think
time
it's-
being, that's the proposal.
Well, that was,
If you had to say an accessory dwelling apartment in your home, that you could rent that for short term?
It's not, no, it's okay.
Yes, you could.
Yeah.
Yes, you could.
Yes, you could.
Kind of circumvents the idea of accessory dwelling unit in its original concept, but yes, you could. The woman that spoke both here at our public hearing and again at the council the other night, who vacates the house while she rents it and she
Right.
goes someplace else.
she's
But in technically, it's an owner-occupied, in her case, resident, because that's her legal residence and she is there most of the time.
So for her, it works.
Except the
Right.
344 times she rented it out in the last 3 years.
I don't think that was her. I think that was the woman with the 3-unit one. But anyway, yeah,
The thing is,
So the folks that had a,
we have rules with strong teeth. It's better to have that than have them doing it under the carpet. You know, because basically what the city council's saying, well, all these people that are doing it, as long as they don't get caught, it's okay.
No, they're not saying that, it's just the reality of it. Like any rule you break, till you get caught.
so these houses that were being a problem, they're in a residential zone.
you know, this is funny because this comes up with
They were.
one house as a problem.
Well, 4 houses, but yeah, I understand.
Isolated problems. And
Okay,
that's how
so-
this- And that's how this gets going.
We don't have to take any action on this tonight.
We don't have to do anything with it.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it's not coming back to the planning board. It's gonna stay right with the council.
All
They're
right.
gonna make the rules?
Yeah, that's what we do.
That's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
It is their bailiwick.
All
I
right.
saw the state Supreme Court just,
Said no,
They just,
they agreed with the city of Portsmouth.
right.
Yes, they did.
They said, no, you can't
it
rent
was an
it.
Airbnb.
Right.
Yeah. Well, but, I mean, there were a lot of things in that opinion which are useful, I think. They,
But regardless of which way we end up going,
sure,
the
I
fact that they,
believe
the
they.
the
However
fact,
we write the ordinance, we just have to keep that opinion in mind.
Right.
And make sure it conforms to that opinion as to what we're doing.
it strengthens our hand
So
greatly.
it's-
That's all we gotta do.
That's, so, thank you for
Strengthens-
pointing that out,
strengthens the
Peter.
hand of the city.
Is there any
Strengthens
other
the hand of the city.
business?
Yes.
Yes, I move to adjourn. No, is there other business, Steve?
We have a CIP next week, right?
Yep.
Capital Improvements Plan meeting next
Good night,
Wednesday.
David.
Yes, next week.
You got
And,
Support Sarah?
yeah, I'll save my LRPC, my exciting LRPC report for next week, next month.
All right.
Can't fund it.
So,
They'll pay for the grants.
I'll second Dave most.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
What are we voting on?
To adjourn, yeah. And to grant you a stipend for life, of course. Just like you wanted. It's not much, but.
So that's the story with the short-term housing.
Turn that thing off, Glenn.